Okay, so some of you were here, some of you weren't, okay? Those of you who are here, and this is not a trick question, okay? If there was like one thing we focused on last time or like one takeaway, what was your takeaway?
Review.
Yeah.
Okay. Lots of chazar. Okay, right. Okay, so when I was thinking about what I'm going to give shiur on, I was like, so I was preparing and thinking about what to do. And I was like, no. There's only one thing that if I was not a hypocrite, that I would do for this shiur.
Give the same shiur.
Give the same shiur. Okay. So what I did was I sat down and I said, okay, I'm gonna prepare the shiur again.
Wow.
Okay, because what would I be if I didn't do that, right? Like, you know, yeah. So and it turned out different, right? So we're gonna, it turned out different. So what we're gonna do is we are going to do the same shiur, okay? And I think because, right? I mean, it's what can I do? You know, if we're taking chazal seriously, you know, and the trick is gonna be, actually, you know what? Maybe what we'll do actually. Let's start at the end. Okay, so here's one for you, and here, take this, pass it down. Okay, so on the back, I have 3 quotes from the same 3 people, but different quotations. Okay, so first one, I feel like the most common version of this is from Mark Twain. Okay, but this is a different version from Albert Einstein. He says, "Education is what remains after one has forgotten what one has learned in school." Okay, the Mark Twain one I think is like, I never let my schooling interfere with my education.
Yeah.
Right. So Mark Twain sounds like he's being like, actually, like it's coming from a place of like, my schooling was worthless and therefore I have to like, you know, like actually learn. I think there's another shot for what Einstein is saying. Could we give a shot in? Yeah.
Basically, it's like, so school you learn facts, but even if you remove the facts, education is like training you how to think.
Ah, okay, good. So what we have to do is like this: is facts you should not forget. Forgetting facts is bad, okay, right? But being able to approach the facts with fresh thinking is where real innovation and discovery comes in. Yeah, was there some question here? I thought I heard something on the Zoom. Okay, whatever. Yeah, okay, so that's going to be the goal. Is we have the facts from last time. Those who were here last time, feel free to like remember the facts, but like we're going to try to think it through fresh, okay? And I am going to close that door.
I already listened to the recording 100 times. I already listened to
Oh
the
no! Yeah. I mean, oh yes.
Oh my God.
Oh no. Okay, yeah. All right. So let just to get into the spirit of what we're doing today, let's read on. Okay, so we have another quote from Krishnamurti, different lecture. Learning is one thing and acquiring knowledge is another. Learning is a continuous process, not a process of addition, not a process which you gather and then from there act. Most of us gather knowledge as memory, as idea, stored up as experience, and from there act. Learning is never accumulative, it is constant movement, okay? So this is kind of like a subtle feeling that you get, and you probably could relate to this when you're learning. You're learning, and then there's a question, and then there's this feeling of, well, I learned blank. It's like a turning backwards, you know? So if you're drawing upon a fact, that's fine, okay? Because again, all understanding has to come from facts, but forward, if you actually want to progress in your knowledge, you have to be willing to think fresh and clean the slate, okay? And then this last thing, this is part of Bruce Lee's book on his style of martial arts, but it applies to everything. And this is just a fragments here, so I'm just going to read all these one-line quotations here. But so he talks about this guy named he calls the classical man. It's not a term; it's an insulting term. Okay, the guy who basically like takes things, memorizes them, and just plugs them into everywhere. Okay, so he says the classical man is just a bundle of routine ideas and tradition. When he acts, he is translating every living moment in terms of the old. Okay, so that's a warning. Okay, meaning if everything you're learning is just taking these new facts and then just like plugging in what you've already learned or just interpreting in light of the thing you've learned before, you're not going to progress. Okay, and again, it's not a matter of like forgetting, because you can have an idea and put it on the back burner. But there's I don't know if you've ever experienced this. When I was in yeshiva, they called it previous svara syndrome, where like you're in a shiur and you're going through a sugya, and like you come up with a svara and it's exactly the same svara as you had, or as someone had like the time before. You're not going to progress that way. And there's an art and there's a skill to like letting it like sit in the background and influence your intuition, but you're trying to think afresh each time. Okay. He goes on, knowledge is fixed in time, whereas knowing is continual. Knowledge comes from a source, from an accumulation, from a conclusion, while knowing is a movement. The additive process is merely a cultivation of memory, which becomes mechanical. Learning is never cumulative. It is a movement of knowing, which has no beginning and no end. So again, that's what you're saying with the difference between facts and thinking. Thinking is a dynamic thing where you're approaching it fresh in the moment. And when you're, like I said last time, when someone asked about methodology, and I said that methodology is, someone said methodology is like taking a system and applying it to stuff. And I said, well, what if methodology is not a fixed system? I quoted an anecdote from Rebbe. We're remembering facts, by the way. I quoted an anecdote from Rebbe Jeet saying how when it comes to thinking, there's no methodology. That's what he meant, is that if you are walking into an area saying, okay, I have to do X, Y, Z, or take this step, that step, that step, that's not going to get you anywhere other than to old ideas. So it's a fresh thing. In martial arts cultivation, there must be a sense of freedom. A conditioned mind is never a free mind. Conditioning limits a person within the framework of a particular system. So I think I mentioned this last time also, is like when you have an idea, when you have a notion of what you think the answer is supposed to look like, then it's like looking through like a keyhole or like a stencil, and you're only seeing the things that fit that shape, you know? And in order to actually discover, you have to have as much freedom as you can, okay? To express yourself in freedom, you must, okay, this is the key, this is the whole reason why I quoted the whole thing. To express yourself in freedom, you must die to everything of yesterday, okay? From the old, you derive security. From the new, you gain the flow. So what we have to do, it's easy for you because you weren't here last time, is we have to die to everything we learned last time, okay? And try to approach it fresh. And the reason why we are drawn to previous ideas is security, okay? Is you want to feel like you know something. And if you have an idea that was really good, you could just cling on to it and rest on that. Real learning involves like letting go of the need for that security. There's a figure who I can quote, which is not so politically correct. I guess it's faded a little bit. Anyone know Louis C.K., the comedian?
Yeah.
Okay, right. So he got into some hot water, right? But the thing that made Louis C.K. different from all the comedians, I mean, he had a different style, but the thing that made him different was, if you ask, I saw this show with Jerry Seinfeld, Chris Rock, Louis C.K., and Ricky Gervais. Yeah.
Yeah.
So they are all great comedians, but there was a question that was asked to them about, like, when they were on tour, like before COVID, then they would give comedy shows. And they would give it from year to year. And the question was, how much of your comedy act do you reuse? So I don't remember the exact numbers. Chris Rock was like 95%. Jerry Seinfeld was like 80%. I forgot Ricky Gervais, but Louis C.K. would scrap his entire routine and start fresh. And that's crazy because you try out all these jokes and they work. And it's a painful process of trying these jokes and then falling flat on your face and then you build up a thing. So most comedians, once they find it, they just take security in it and they know they're going to get the laughs and they know that they're going to get the ticket sales, But what struck me as like true with Louis C.K. is he's just relying on the comedic thinking, and it's so insecure, and you're going to fail, and it's going to feel bad. But like that's the part of becoming a chacham, is like being willing to like lean into the insecurity and not know where your thinking is going to take you. And you're going to have misfires of ideas and like, it's not going to necessarily work out. But like, the more you accustom yourself to doing that, the more trust you'll build in your intuition, and then you'll discover new stuff. Whereas everyone else is just going to be relying on old stuff and not really growing as much as they could. Last line, to realize freedom, the mind has to learn to look at life, which is a vast movement without the bondage of time, for freedom lies beyond the field of consciousness. Watch, but don't stop and interpret. I am free. Then you're living in a memory of something that has gone. To understand and live now, everything of yesterday must die. So we'll have to go back to this. You're living in a memory of what has gone, and to understand and live now, but everything of yesterday must die. That's the mentality we're going to try to go into today with. Okay. Let's do it. Okay. All right. So going back to the beginning. Talmud Bavli, Ma Yase Adam V'Yachkam. And I'm not going to go over the facts as much. I'll supply whatever facts you need, but ask me if you don't know anything, because most of the people were here. But we are going to try to get further than we did yesterday, because we only got through like the first line. Okay, so Ma Yase Adam V'Yachkam. So this is the question that was posed by the Chachmei Alexandria to Rabbi, I forgot it again, Yeshua ben Hanania, I think. Okay, Amar Lahen. So what can a person do to become wise? Okay. You ready to die? Let's start off in a different place. Okay, this is just striking me now. Last time we asked what is methodology. What is wisdom? And wisdom as differentiated from, there's obviously lots of terms for knowledgey things, you know, like das and tuna, yeah.
Wisdom is probably the ability to take whatever knowledge that you do have and develop it into something beyond that.
Okay, interesting. So knowledge is the ability to take everything you have and develop it into something beyond that. Can you be more specific about something beyond that?
Knowledge is the fact. Something that
Okay.
you know, something that you have.
Yeah.
I know that wisdom is being able to take that fact and give it reason, give it purpose, give it more than just that.
Okay.
Almost like a context point to it, but like
Okay.
developing that.
Okay, I hear. Yeah, I'll comment on it in a second. I want to hear all
Maybe similar, but a little different.
Yeah.
Taking the knowledge that you have
Yeah.
and being able to apply it to many different situations.
Okay. Anyone else?
Yeah, Amar Plato.
Omar Plato. That's a good source.
We actually end up rejecting it, but whatever. It's
That's okay. If all I got in life was Plato's Havaminas, Daino, you know.
okay. So it's the ability to recognize things for as they are, and also simultaneously the ability to like use whatever you have and then apply to the situation at hand.
Okay, is that
It's pretty simple.
it's really, okay, fine. All right. So I'm hearing two definitions. So the definition. So I have there's a Rashi, and I don't remember where it is. And the reason I don't remember where it is, you know the Musaf Rashi, like that quotes from other areas. So I saw it in the Musaf Rashi. So I don't know where it is. There's a Rashi that says that a Chacham is Yodea Mashalamad. He knows what he learned, which is very funny, you know. So there is a basic definition of Chachma in Mishlei. I think I mentioned this last time also. Basic definition of Chachma is received knowledge. So no one is saying that right now. Okay, you're saying taking what you learn and then seeing it like in a context, in a larger context in some way. And you guys are saying taking what you learn and then applying it in terms of real life, or seeing how it fits into real life. And I think in English, and not that this is a raya, but like in English, we definitely use wisdom to mean something beyond the facts that has something to do with living life, you know? So, and then we also have, you know, we have Chazal's definition, Ezu Chacham Haroes Hanolad, which seems to fit into what you're saying more of who is a Chacham? Someone who sees the consequences, meaning not just having like abstract knowledge, but being able to see how it's going to play out. Okay. So I don't know what they were asking, Ma Yase Adam V'Yachkam, but just thinking about the question of what is Chachma, let's see if we have that as an open question when we read the answer, then maybe that'll change the way we learn it this time around. Amar Lahen, so he said to them, Yarbe b'yeshiva v'yamai b'schora. He should increase in sitting and decrease in merchandising and business. Okay, fine. So then the Gemara challenges it. Harbe also came below also lahem. Many people did this and it didn't benefit them. Ella yivakshu rachamim mimisha chachma shelo. Rather, he should ask for mercy from the one who the chachma belongs to. Shnemar ki Hashem yitin chachma mipiv dasafuna, because God Hashem gives chachma from his mouth knowledge and understanding. Okay, so we asked last time basically what are the two pieces of advice? What does it mean yarbe b'yeshiva and yimai b'schora? And then why is he coming in with this thing of ask for chachma from the one who gives it? We said why didn't he give that as part of the original advice? So we said there's three possibilities. Either he's rejecting his first answer, which seems unlikely because R Yitzchak Kanpanton spends a lot of time like going to that first answer. Second possibility is you do both. Third possibility is that if the first strategy doesn't work, then you do the second one. Okay. So then we read the first paragraph, and that's kind of what we focused on last time. So let's just go over that and see if we get anything new. Harotza shiachkam yarbe b'yeshiva. One who wants to become wise should increase in sitting. Ratzalomar, this whole thing is from Niddah. Ratzalomar yarbe leishiv al sefer la'ayin hativ. You should increase his sitting on a book to analyze well. Ki lo dai lo b'pam achas v'lo b'shtayim. It's not going to be enough to do it once or twice. She ya'ayin hadavar hu pam achar pam. He has to investigate the thing time after time. Ki b'chol pam sheyachzor la'ayin yischadesh lo eze davar. Every time he goes back to investigate, then some new chiddush will come. V'zehu she'amru zal inu doma shone pirko kuf pa'amim l'shone pirko kuf aleph pa'amim. Like Chazal say, there's no comparison between one who learns his chapter 100 times and one who learns it 101 times. Okay, so we did the Gemara last time. The Gemara was shocking, and I actually did have the chiddush when I reviewed it afterwards. Okay, but we'll open it again. So the Gemara, if you go under the line, Talmud Bavli Chagiga Tes Amud Beis. Amar Barhehe LaHillel. Barhehe said to Hillel, "My dichsiv, what does it mean when it says in Malachi, V'shavtem u'risem bein tzadik l'rasha bein obed elokim asher lo avado? What does it mean when it says you'll go back and see the difference between a tzadik and a rasha, between one who serves God and one who doesn't serve Him? Hainu tzadik, hainu obed elokim. A tzadik is no obed elokim. Hainu rasha, hainu lo avado. A rasha is someone who doesn't serve God. So why does it need two clauses? Amar le, so he said to him, Avdo v'lo avado, tarvaihu tzadiki gemurin inho. So tzaddik in Russia is actually tzaddik in Russia, but avado v'lo avado are both tzaddikim gemurim. Ve'eno dome shona pirka mea pa'amim l'shona pirka mea ve'echad. But there's no comparison between one who reviews his parak 100 times and one who reviews it 101. Amar le, he said to him, umishum chad zimna kari le lo avado, because of one time, then he calls it someone who doesn't serve God. Amar le, in, he said yes. Say ulaman mishok shel chamaran. Go learn from the donkey drivers. Asara parsi bezuza. If you pay one zuz, you get 10 parsaos of travel. Chad asara parsi. But if you get 11, if you ask for an additional parsa, betray zuz, you get charged an additional zuz. Okay. So we had a question last time which we didn't answer, which was that seems like hyperbole, yeah.
Essentially, if you want to go the extra mile, you get charged.
Exactly, as if you want 10, right? That seems unfair. Okay, right? So we had that question. Is it seems? Yeah. Actually, I don't know if this is Jews or Babylonians. Yeah. But it could be both. We'll take that off of the recording afterwards. So we asked last time. It seems like exaggeration. Really, like the difference between 100 and 101 is that big? Second question,
You're gonna decide God is gonna like pay drivers that are.
Yeah, lo avado is an extreme thing that this guy did 100 times and he's considered someone who doesn't serve God, and 101 is the one who serves him. Then we ask the question of what's the magic number of 100? And then we ask the question of, well, what about the 101 and 102 guy? Is this just infinite? And then if so, then like, what are you supposed to do? Is just like, is the whole thing an exaggeration? Yeah. So we did not come up with answers last time, but I actually had input. I don't know if this is him on here. Howie Burstein called me and gave an answer. And I actually was going to contact him before this and ask him for it, but I was like, no, I got to dive everything from yesterday and think about it fresh. So let's think about it, okay? And see if we come up with anything. And then I'll say what I'm thinking now in light of what he said. Okay, so the questions are, what is the difference between 100 and 101? Why does it characterize the 100 as not serving God and the 101 as serving him? And what's the donkey thing? Just, it seems totally redundant. Like as if you had a question on this and I'm going to prove it to you. Donkeys, it's just like does not seem like okay, fine. Now all my questions are answered. Rosh Hashanah, you mean?
Rosh Hashanah, sorry. That we brushed over, because we brushed over 100 times. We went that one last year.
Yeah.
At 101 negates all.
Beautiful. No. No. I mean, you could say a lot of 100 symbolisms, but unless we have like a reason for going in that direction, then I'm not inclined.
Is there anything wrong with just like a very simple short answer, or is it just
You say no. Okay,
so hyperbole, or it's just like it's just a manner of speaking.
Okay, so I'm glad you said that because so earlier in this year, in the year, we did Avram Ben Ramam's essay on Agadata, and he goes and he classifies the different types of midrashim, and he says one of the midrashim is just hyperbole. Mm-hmm. That's a category. Okay, it says there's Dibru Dibru Torah b'lashon havai, Dibru Nevi'im b'lashon havai, Dibru Chachamim b'lashon havai. That the Torah, the Nevi'im, and the Chachamim speak in exaggeration, and it was just a rhetorical style. So I think that's mostly what we said last time. It's just learn it a lot, and if you think you learned it enough, learn it again, and you'll find something new. So there's nothing wrong with that. Yeah, nothing wrong with that. Yeah, and again, just methodology-wise, it's always good to say the obvious answer because either people were missing the obvious answer and not thinking about it deeply. And when you say it, you now examine it as an object of thought and you can get more out of it. Or there's a mistake in the obvious answer and that will lead you to something new. So it's always good to say the obvious answer. Yeah.
Well, at least the story, did you get that value of you a little bit? It's not meant to show you, it's meant to show you that from 10 to 11, you might think, oh, it's worth this much. But then I give you the expensive value to try to stress that it's something really important. Okay,
good. So, okay, so this is the thing. Hold on just 1 second here. Okay, so there is a thing where you feel like the additional time learning is just going to give you a quantitative difference, meaning I'm just going to get it a little bit clearer, or like I'm going to know it better, or I'm going to remember it better. But there is a phenomenon of learning it another time and you get a qualitative difference. Now it doesn't mean that you can predict when that is, but that's why that's maybe the purpose of the exaggeration is like you can learn it 100 times and you think to yourself, I've exhausted everything, but then one more time can give you a qualitatively different insight.
It's not even literally 100, it's not the stress of that even when you seemingly looked at beyond that there's still more to
right.
do.
Okay, good. That's a good answer. I like that. Anything else? I'm going to attempt to say what Howie Burstein told me. And if this is him on the line, then he'll correct me.
So can you say the donkey thing again also?
Yeah, the donkey thing is, so the question was, the Gemara says about the pasuk that it says one who doesn't serve God and one who serves God refers to one who learns his chapter 100 times and one who learns 101. So the Gemara says, really? Like, you're not serving God if you learn 100 and you are serving him if you learn 101. So the Gemara says, yes, go learn from the donkey merchants or the donkey Ubers that if you take a donkey for 10 parsaos, it'll cost you 1 zuz. But then if you take it for an 11th parsa, it'll cost you 2 zuzim. Yeah.
One other idea. You could have the person who learns it 100 times, they just throw you about or fade away 400 times. But when somebody told me that somebody learns it 100 times, you still doesn't get it, and you start to like just stop, which is the idea of going that extra.
Okay. So that actually is going to fit in with the next paragraph, which, or sorry, 2 paragraphs from now, which we didn't do last time. Okay, so that'll fit in, and when I read it, then I'll try to remember it, if not, remind me. Okay. So I think what Howie Burstein said was he took it in terms of the avado and lo avado. Okay, and there was a guy, I think Asher was his name. Yeah, who said, what is 100 a magic number? So Howie, I believe, said that's exactly the point. Okay, the guy who's trying to get it 100 times is doing it in order to like meet some sort of like super ego goal, of like, I'm gonna do it 100 times, Yeah, triple digits, right? A nice round number. But then the guy who's doing it 101 is not doing it for the super ego. Now, again, this is all drasha, so we can take some liberties here, because you could say, well, the guy's doing 101, he wants to be better than the 100 guy, But like, in other words, that there is the guy who's trying to like meet the quota that's expected, that is some sort of like level. And then there's the guy who is not concerned about level. So how he was saying 101 is the guy who's not concerned about level. And that is a qualitative difference of your avodas Hashem. There's the Oved Me'ira and the Oved Me'ahava. And the Oved Me'ira is goal-oriented. And the guy who's Oved Me'ahava is not goal-oriented. And that's, and it's a different level of avodas Hashem, but also when you're doing it for a non-goal-oriented reason, then you find different things. You discover different things. And this is something that like, oh man, okay, I'm gonna read a long anecdote, okay, but it's gonna be a good one, all right? And I apologize, I guess, if anyone is listening to this, if they've heard it before. But you know what? You can learn something multiple times, and it's good. This is something. Okay, if you haven't done this already, spoiler alert, you're gonna get in a rut with your learning at some point. Okay, where you're not making progress or you're feeling you're not making progress. I did say this last time, but I didn't say the anecdote. So there is so Richard Feynman, Nobel Prize winning physicist, grew up around the corner, past his house every day on the way to Yeshiva, the old Feynman house. So so there's this anecdote from the book, Surely You're Joking, Mr. Feynman, which I really, really like. And whenever I'm in a rut, literally whenever I'm in a rut, I will read through this and then find a way to do this, and it'll get me out of the rut. Okay, so long anecdote, but it's a good one. Okay, so settle in for story mode. Okay, so Feynman again was a Nobel Prize winning physicist, genius guy. He says that he was at Cornell. Okay, which is very prestigious. It's an Ivy League. Yeah, right. Okay, Ivy League. So then he says he got in the mail an invitation from the Institute for Advanced Study. Okay, Einstein was teaching there. We know who he is. Von Neumann, I don't know who he is. Weil, I don't know who he is. I guess these are big physics guys. All these great minds, they write to me and invite me to be a professor there. And not just a regular professor. Somehow they knew my feelings about the Institute, how it's too theoretical, how there's not enough real activity and challenge. So they write, we appreciate that you have a considerable interest in experiment and in teaching. So we have made arrangements to create a special type of professorship, if you wish. Half professor at Princeton and half at the Institute. Princeton, okay, Princeton, Cornell, Advanced Institute. Institute for Advanced Study, special exception, a position better than Einstein even. It was ideal, it was perfect. It was absurd. It was absurd. The other offers had made me feel worse up to a point. They were expecting me to accomplish something. But this offer was so ridiculous, so impossible for me ever to live up to, so ridiculously out of proportion. The other ones were just mistakes. This was an absurdity. I laughed at it while I was shaving, thinking about it. And then I thought to myself, you know, what they think of you is so fantastic, it's impossible to live up to. You have no responsibility to live up to it. Oh, you know what? I skipped a paragraph. Yeah, I skipped it because I thought it wasn't good. The paragraph was saying he was burnt out and he couldn't come up with ideas. Okay, then he gets this offer. Fine, okay, fine. Okay. So he says, it was a brilliant idea. You have no responsibility to live up to what other people think you ought to accomplish. I have no responsibility to be like they expect me to be. It's their mistake, not my failing. So then he says, okay, blah, blah, blah. Okay, it wasn't a failure on my part that the Institute for Advanced Study expected me to be that good. It was impossible. It was clearly a mistake. And the moment I appreciated the possibility that they might be wrong, I realized that it was also true of all the other places, including my own university. I am what I am. And if they expect me to be good and they're offering me some money for it, it's their hard luck. Then within the day, by some strange miracle, perhaps he overheard me talking about it, or perhaps he just understood me, Bob Wilson, who was the head of the laboratory there at Cornell, called me in to see him. He said in a serious tone, Feynman, you're teaching your classes well, you're doing a good job, and we're very satisfied. Any other expectations we might have are a matter of luck. When we hire a professor, we're taking all the risks. If it comes out good, all right. If it doesn't, too bad. But you shouldn't worry about what you're doing or not doing. He said it much better than that, and it released me from the feeling of guilt. Okay, so that now he's burnt out. He's not discovering anything, but he has this like cushy job and no one expects everything. So now here's where the magic starts. Then I had another thought. Physics disgusts me a little bit now, but I used to enjoy doing physics. Why did I enjoy it? I used to play with it. I used to do whatever I felt like doing. It didn't have to do with whether it was important for the development of nuclear physics, but whether it was interesting and amusing for me to play with. When I was in high school, I'd see water running out of a faucet getting narrower, and I would wonder if I could figure out what determines that curve. I found it was rather easy to do. I didn't have to do it. It wasn't important for the future of science. Somebody else had already done it. That didn't make any difference. I'd invent things and play with things for my own entertainment. So I got this new attitude. Now that I am burnt out and I'll never accomplish anything, I've got this nice position at the university teaching classes, which I rather enjoy, and I just like to read the Arabian Nights for pleasure. I'm going to play with physics whenever I want to without worrying about anything important whatsoever. Okay. Within a week, I was in the cafeteria and some guy fooling around throws a plate in the air. As the plane went up in the air, I saw it wobble and I noticed the red medallion of Cornell on the plate going around. It was pretty obvious to me that the medallion went around faster than the wobbling. I had nothing to do, so I started to figure out the motion of the rotating plate. I discovered that when the angle is very slight, the medallion rotates twice as fast as the wobble rate, 2-to-1. It came out a complicated equation. Then I thought, is there some way I can see it in a more fundamental way? By looking at the forces or the dynamics, why it's 2-to-1. I don't remember how I did it, but I ultimately worked out what the motion of the mass particles is and how all the accelerations balance to make it come out 2-to-1. I still remember going to, I never know how to pronounce this guy's name, Hans Bethe, and saying, hey, Hans, I noticed something interesting. Here the plate goes around so, and the reason it's 2-to-1 is blah, blah, blah. And I show him the accelerations. He says, Feynman, that's pretty interesting, but what's the importance of it? Why are you doing it? Ha, I say, there's no importance whatsoever. I'm just doing it for the fun of it. His reaction didn't discourage me. I had made up my mind I was going to enjoy physics and do whatever I liked. I went on to work out equations of wobbles. Then I thought about how electron orbits start to move in relativity. Then there's the Dirac equation in electrodynamics, and then quantum electrodynamics. And before I knew it, it was a very short time, I was playing, working really with the same old problem that I love so much that I had stopped working on when I went to Los Alamos, my thesis type problems, those old fashioned wonderful things. It was effortless. It was easy to play with these things. It was like uncorking a bottle. Everything flowed out effortlessly. I almost tried to resist it. There was no importance to what I was doing, but ultimately there was. The diagrams and the whole business that I got the Nobel Prize for came from piddling around with that wobbling plate. Okay, so that's the moral of the story, is that when you are learning because you feel you need to accomplish something or meet a certain objective, so that's a framework that's goal-oriented, that's lo lishma, and it's going to limit you because everything you're doing, first of all, your creativity is limited by the pressure, and you're constantly judging yourself of, am I living up to this thing? But if you're just playing with it for enjoyment, you know, like David Melech says, Zmiros hayolichu kecha, that like the chukim are like songs to me, you know, or like it says in Mishnah, like I'm just playing with chachma, you know. So then you don't put this pressure on yourself, and it frees up your mind to accomplish things when you're not trying to accomplish them. So that is the guy who's not trying for 100. He's just not worried about the number. He's just like looking into it to see what he can get, you know.
That's beautiful.
It's a good anecdote, right? Yeah. Okay, so we got something new out of the 101 times. Okay, so now let's move on. Okay, so we read this last time, but we didn't think into it. So now we're on the second paragraph of R Yitzchak Kanpanton. Oh, I guess I didn't introduce this. For those who weren't here last time, this is the first methodology sefer from Rishon, late Rishon. He wrote about Gemara, but the first part is all about learning in general. So it's called Darchei Talmud or Darchei Gemara. Okay, so he now gives a second interpretation of what it means, Yarba b'yeshiva v'yimai b'schora. O yirte ki lo yelech b'schoraso uv'masao uv'matano rak yarba b'yeshiva. Means he shouldn't go in his merchandise, but rather he should sit in yeshiva. Yeshiv badad ve'idom. He should sit in isolation and be silent, meaning he should sit in isolation from business stuff. Kamosh Amruzal, lo kol amar b'schora machkim. As Chazal say, not everyone who increases in merchandise becomes wise. Amru, and they said, Harotze shiachim yadrim, harotze shiasher yatzmin. They said, one who wants to become wise should turn south, and one who wants to become rich should turn north. And we said the main idea behind that is you can't do both. You can't turn north and south at the same time. So the question is, what's the advice here? What does it mean that you want, if you want to become wise, you should minimize your schora?
What's schora?
Schora is merchandise or business dealings. And one of the questions we did ask is, what is schora? You know, because schora back then was like traveling and selling stuff, you know, so you are like going away from home, you're exposing yourself to danger. The question was like, do you translate that now into just all business activities, all work? Does it even include school, or is it like davka, like a real time suck, you know? So that's an open question. I'm inclined to think it means all work, because if this is general advice, not everyone was like a merchant. So like, just minimize your work, you know? Okay, so let going, what was it?
He said minimize the time outside the Beit Midrash. I'm saying not necessarily.
Why not?
You learn outside the Beit Midrash.
Oh, fine, yeah, right. You mean learning, right? Yeah, David?
Yeah, I mean, I also think that if he's going to be, right, work, which is presumably also does require some thinking within that too.
Right.
If you're spending a lot of like thought in work, and a lot of thought in learning, at some point they will, or at least in some areas, they will start to mesh together. And then you're going to start thinking and learning in ways that will, I mean, obviously it is good to think of it in ways that are not just like in the Midrash things, but it will start to get some tainting from these other work ideas. And you're going to start to approach it, especially you're going to approach it in more trying to get something out of it. Like,
okay. So are you saying that it's going to affect your actual like learning? Like,
yeah.
Can you elaborate on what you meant by tainting?
Okay. Yeah. So it will change the way that you're going to approach your learning and then actually like the learning process. Where, I mean, at the very least, seeing the way that you were just talking about that thing from Feynman.
Yeah.
You're going to start now, you're going to start approaching learning in a similar way you approach work. You're going to be trying to get something.
Okay.
instead of just playing with it, not trying to get something out of it, now you're going to start like blending the two and trying to be getting something out of your learning, which is going to
Interesting.
actually.
Okay, I'm going to challenge you. I hear that, but is that true? Meaning, like, why can't you have a person, or not? Why can't you? But like I can conceive of a person who like works to make a living, and then like learns, and they're completely separate. It's like, what's to say that just because you're working a lot, it's going to somehow make you goal oriented in learning? And you don't have to say it's going to have to do that. Like, I just don't understand how like that's the, like they seem like two different involvements, like I'll give you a ridiculous example. Okay. Say you work a lot and you eat sushi. There's nothing that says that because you work a lot and you're goal oriented there, that you're going to be goal oriented in your eating of sushi, So like they're two different pursuits,
The contest, we gotta eat as many things in 1 second.
Right. It's a different thing.
Can you be clear on the question you're asking?
Yeah. So I guess I'm asking a question on the statement, and then I'm asking a question on David's interpretation. My question on the statement is how does minimizing schora make you more wise? That's the general question. And then my question on David is, he's saying his theory was that if you become involved in work, then that goal-oriented, accomplishment-oriented paradigm is going to affect your learning. And I was saying, really? Yeah.
They say that minimizing the score isn't necessarily the necessary work, but that work that you're getting for things like pleasure and extra spending and extra whatever it might be, more than the necessary. And so things focusing on that is going to be losing the true wisdom, which is
Okay, so that's a good possibility. Okay, meaning that if you are invested, okay, so certainly, okay, let's put it this way: we can assume that it doesn't mean minimize schora to the point where you can't eat. Right? Presumably you are making enough of a living to take care of your basic needs. So the area that you're minimizing in is going to be excess, right? So the question has to be, why are you pursuing this excess money? So presumably some sort of pleasure, fantasy, prestige, something like that. And if your energy is involved in that, then Chazal might be saying, withdraw it from that and invest it in Chachma. That's a good investment. Yeah. Okay, that's definitely a possibility.
Well,
And I think Yosef Levine last time was saying something similar to that, of like where your energies are flowing, like you only have a certain amount of energy, and either you're invested in material success or pleasure, or whatever you want to say, that kavod, or you're invested in learning, and the material stuff is just a means to support that. Not the same approach, but in a similar parsha. Yeah.
I was going to say that it's not really an answer. It's not an answer at all, actually. But just you kind of make it seem like the working is bad. It's not that it's bad per se. It's just that they're mutually exclusive.
Right, and it's not even mutually exclusive. Absolutely, because it doesn't say stop working.
Right.
It says you might b'schora. Right. That the question is like whatever excess energy you have, that's the mutually exclusive thing. Meaning there's a bare minimum you have to make in terms of not bare minimum. There's a minimum you have to make to take care of your needs, but then whatever extra stuff you have, the hours or whatever you're going to spend, what are you going to do with it? So that you can't do both.
Sure.
Right. Yeah.
Similar to David, but just to add to it a little bit, maybe it's saying like they're asking, how do we become wise? And he's just saying that if you want to become wise, then you have to like recognize that and like actively make that a value and spend your time on that.
Okay.
To work.
Okay, good. So just to summarize, and we're not going to read the Mefarshim here, but the on the Mishnah on Avos that this comes from, of the Lo Kol Marve B'Schora Machkim, they quote the other Mishnah of Yaseh Taraso Keva Umalakto Arai, that like it's a matter of a hold on. Say the way you said it again. The way you said it was good.
That when they're asking a question, how do I become wise?
Yeah.
So he's answering, if you want to become wise, you have to actively recognize that that's a value that
Okay,
you
right.
have and do that instead of
Right. So the question is a matter of values hierarchy, right? So if you if you're not becoming wise, the question is it because you're not valuing it high enough? And then I give a share in Miguel on this.
Yeah.
Make your Torah the main thing, where you really tap into your success and feelings of accomplishment, and the work is just a means to support that. Yeah.
Could also explain that the two ways, not necessarily do it both, but at the very least that if stopping working and focusing on that is enough, then you have to go and start davening for it as well.
Oh, okay.
Just as a priority.
Yeah, okay. So let's do, just in the interest of time, we only have like 15 minutes. Let's do the last two paragraphs of this. The last paragraph is about davening because that's the part I really want to get to, but this next part is also good. So he says, Nakot hai klala biyadacha. Take this general principle in your hand. And the grammar is a little weird here, or the syntax here. So I don't know if I'm reading it right. Kol mevukash shetavakesh v'lo hisagta oso b'pam harishona. Anything you seek that you did not achieve the first time, presumably in learning, hu sheyesh ikuf b'davar. That's because there's some impediment or obstacle. Lo tisigenu ki im b'toreach gadol v'amal rav im tisigenu. You will not attain it except with great toil and work if you attain it. Okay, meaning it's not like it's a guarantee you're going to attain it, but if you do attain it, you need great work. Yeah.
Well, it seems like he's saying that just doing it again and again isn't going to actually fix it, but you actually have to realize what the obstacle is and try to get around it.
Let's see. Let me think about that. Yes, I see that, right? Because he's saying Hushish Ikupadavar. Right. It's not just like it's not like when you are exercising and you just do reps.
Right.
You know, it's not just that's not going to do it. Right. Okay, that's actually a good point. So meaning, okay. So I'll tell you the point I was going to make, and then this will fit in, is that I think there is a difference in mentality when you view yourself as I don't know whether I can attain the thing, so I'm just going to try, versus I know I can attain the thing, but there's just obstacles in the way, you know? And that second way, first of all, it is going to give you more self-confidence. And because you are a Tzelem Elokim, you got like reality on your side, that you do have a mind, and like your mind is equipped to like know stuff. Doesn't mean you're going to be an Einstein, you know, but like you have reason to believe that you can know this. But then what you're adding is that the question is, are there obstacles that I'm not seeing, you know, that I need to take away?
Again and again and again.
Right.
If you're doing it the same way, you're not.
Right. That's another Einstein quote, right? Is insanity is doing the same thing.
Over and over and expecting different results.
Yeah, exactly. Right. Yeah. Right. And this is another Bruce Lee thing also, is that it's not daily increase, but daily decrease. That the question is like, what is the impediment that I need to take away that will allow my natural abilities to shine forth? Yeah. Easier said than done, but that's a good point here. Okay, then he says, therefore you need to strive with zrizus and charitus. Now, zrizus people usually translate as like zeal or energy. Was it?
Rushing.
Yeah. Charitus is I think people also translate as diligence, and maybe I'm just biased from Mishlei. Mishlei treats charitus as like intelligent diligence, meaning not working harder, working smarter, you know? So I think that fits in with this also. Yeah, that's the part I didn't know how to read. I think he must mean mechuvan shalot hazigeu, or the thing you're intending for that you did not attain. I don't know why it's in the future tense. You need to strive with all of your ability and might to prepare and toil yourself with all your ability to attain it. Because striving and diligence in every necessary thing is impossible without it. So this is a side point also. I mean, the point you made is valid, but like, I do think though that there is a fantasy that people have in learning. I call it the autopilot fallacy or fantasy, that like you work and then you get to a point where you just like will hit it and then you'll just coast, you know? And then like it'll be easy. Like I'll just be able to like come up with svaras, you know. And I had this moment again. This was like in my, I don't know, this was my third year in yeshiva or something like that. That I was very discouraged about not making progress. And I don't actually know if this is true, but it might have been your dad and his chavrusa learning in another room, and I overheard them. And you do what you should always do if you hear chachamim, is listen in, because you can get chachma even though it's a private conversation, you know. And they were talking about their own struggles in learning, and that was an eye opener to me, because I was like, oh, I thought that like Rabbi Fader got to this point where he's just like off and running, like you just like you work, and then you hit the thing, and then you're just like, okay, now you're just a svara machine, you know. But no, like everyone is like, you know, and like and even the geniuses, like the like you know the whether in physics or in Gemara, like they have their struggles or they have their thing where they like are. I don't know if I quoted this last time of the that they interviewed Newton, and they said, "How did you come up with calculus?" And he said, "I thought for 10 years." You know, like there is a need to like put in the time and the work, and there's a fantasy that I can find a trick like to get out of it, and like that I feel like is what this paragraph is addressing, you know. And it's combined with the fact that you do have a disposition. You were given a tzelem elokim that can perceive chachma, so you got that going for you, and the question is, are there obstacles I can remove? But at the end of the day, you have to put in the work, you know. So that I think that's what this is emphasizing here. Okay, last paragraph.
It's also just good to note in that, like, if you ever are hitting it, then as frustration builds up, the more and more you're going to like not get anything because you're so like enveloped and you're getting frustrated.
Yeah, the frustration does not help, and I think the 100 times thing like helps with the frustration, because there is a feeling of this shouldn't take 100 times. It should only take 10 times. And what he's saying is no, 101 times is what it's, you know. So like you're doing it, you're putting in the work and you're doing a lot, but that's the natural process. It's not an unnatural process, you know. Okay, now we get to the tefillah thing. Oh, you said something earlier that I said that this third paragraph would address. Do you remember what you said? I said we'd get back to it.
No.
Okay, well, at least I tried to remember. All right, we'll just have to give the shiur a third time. No, okay. All right, last paragraph. This is where he gets to tefillah. V'im kol zeh, with all this.
Oh, that the davening goes hand in hand with
This is before the davening. Now we're up to the davening part, but you said something before that also. Yeah. All right. Well, we'll see. V'im kol zeh, with all this, sarich gamkein levakish rachamim sheyisayuhu min hashamayim. You also need to ask for mercy that to be helped from heaven. The al yomar, and you should not say kochi v'osim yadi asali. You shouldn't say that my might and the strength of my own hand made this for me, like in last week's parsha. Kamosha amru b'mesechas Niddah perak basra ma yase adam v'yacham yarbe b'shiva v'man b'schora harbe asukein v'lo ho'ilu ela yivakish rachamim mimisha chachma shalom. So that was what we just read. V'zehu she'amar Shlomo. Okay, it gives a little weird shot for this pasuk in Mishlei. Maskil al davar yimtza tov uboteach b'Hashem ashrav. One who intelligently approaches something will find good, and one who trusts in Hashem, he will be happy or praiseworthy. Rotalomar, this means to say hamishtada b'charitus limto eze mechuvan umavukash tov. Someone who strives with diligence to find something that's good. V'gam kein boteach b'Hashem, and he also trusts in God. V'lo b'koach sichlo, and not in his intellectual capacity. Ugvaraso, and his might. Ashrav, he will be happy. Kizeh yasig risona be'ezras Hashem. He will attain his desire with God's help. So the question is, what is this step? Obviously, you should daven for everything, but like you know, like we don't say this for everything. We don't say like, what should you do to be healthy? Eat healthy food and ask for the one that health belongs to. You know, what should you do to like, I don't know, get a, you know, like, why is it emphasizing this as a separate step? What is the turning to God going to do for this? And if we can answer the question from before of why wasn't this part of the initial advice, that'd be great. But if we can't answer it, then at least we'll understand why turning to God helps. And just to, yeah.
I mean, because it would kind of, I guess, like a practical measure, it would just kind of humble you and make you less bothered by failure, I guess you could say.
Okay.
You know, you're like, oh, whatever, you know, who am I?
Yeah. Okay, good.
This isn't going so well, but whatever.
Okay, good. So I do think that that's the main thing. So the simple answer, before we get to your answer, the simple answer was God will help you. Okay, but that's not teaching us anything, right? But the more sophisticated answer is the very act of subordinating yourself to God and recognizing that it is not entirely up to you will humble you, thereby removing your ego from the process, which will accomplish many things. Number one, it'll help with the Feynman thing, that you won't be putting that pressure on yourself to accomplish because your ego's out of the picture. Number two, you won't take the failures as hard because you realize there's a tendency among people who are goal-oriented to ascribe success to themselves and ascribe failure to themselves. I mean, you could take it the other way also, that you blame failure on others, but like if you're approaching it in the correct way, you'll realize that there are so many factors that are outside of my control that like I'm not going to let the failure deter me. You know, the obstacle is the way, right? And so turning to God for this is going to help you recognize that there's so many factors beyond my control that like I just have to do what is in my control, which is just to learn, and then I can't control the outcomes. You know, also, we mentioned last time that the ego gets in the way of your ability even to read and to listen, which is that if you are approaching like your reading and learning in a like predatory, devouring way of like, I have to like claw through this to get ideas, that's not going to make you receptive to hearing what the Chachamim are saying behind the words, you know, the song of the music, as we said last time, you know? And so like this mentality of turning to Hashem and saying like, you know, there's a tefillah that David Melech says, Gal einai ve'abita niflos mitorasecha, uncover my eyes and I will see wonders from your Torah. That sort of like, I don't want to call it passive, but like you are the recipient of whatever Chachma Hashem reveals to you, puts you in this humble position to not be this aggressor of knowledge, and that can make you more open to ideas. And I think also there's a problem of when he says you are not taking security in your own intellect. There is a problem of if you do get ideas and you take credit for it, you then have this like kicking back feeling like, oh, I'm great, you know, and it causes you to take security in your own ideas. It makes it harder for you to die to yesterday, you know, and to like scrap what you came up with. And it also makes it so that you become overconfident in your current way of viewing things as opposed to being open to development. Like being open to developing and realizing I could be completely off. Like there's a mistake that you make when you are so invested in a certain way of thinking or a certain idea that you don't want to give it up, even if part of you senses that it's mistaken. And you have to be willing to get rid of that, because that's what causes people to get stuck in theories forever. Like, you know, if you're not willing to abandon your theory when you find a mistake, or if you're not willing to abandon your whole way of thinking, then you're just going to get stuck there and you're not going to progress. So in other words, there's two dimensions. There's trusting in Hashem, and then there's not trusting in your own intellect as the source of your success. And they're both important. Yeah. Okay, so that was the first chapter of Darchei Talmud. I think it's a good book to learn. Not all of it is like this. Like I mentioned, a lot of it is kind of like the Practical Talmud Dictionary, where it goes through and just defines Gemara terms. But there is a lot of good stuff in there in terms of like what to do procedurally for like learning, you know, when you're approaching a text. So I highly endorse it, and happy if this was the first exposure. Yeah.
Could I just ask now
Sure.
on this?
Yeah.
Just general, like your approach question.
Mhm.
How do you, when you do have similar to learn something before, you already have some ideas going into it more, and
Yeah.
it seems like things are going along that similar type of way. You said earlier it's like a skill to how to
Oh, yeah.
not be biased by it, or at least not to see
Yeah.
things, at least at very least not see things in that
Yeah.
lens. So
Okay, so the bad news, or sorry, good news, depending on how you look at it, is it gets easier to do that the more you learn. I think part of it is the security thing. Like you'll see many times if you see the Rosh Yeshiva give shiur, and at this point he's done sugyas a lot, like many times, you'll always see someone say, Rebbe, 30 years ago you said blah blah blah. And he's like, I don't want to hear that, you know. So it does get easier, okay. But the question is, if you have a very good memory, there's actually a Nietzsche quote that says, like, I forgot what it is. I don't read Nietzsche, but I just saw this quote that he was like the worst impediment to becoming a thinker is a good memory, you know. So I was privileged to have a Rebbe with a horrible memory. Rabbi Moskowitz has a horrible memory, and it literally to the point where like we would learn about a Mishlei pasuk with him, and then we would ask him about it the next day, and he would have no recollection of it, you know. And it was great for him because it forced him to learn everything fresh. Okay, so if you have a good, so I think the best thing you can do, there is a certain conscious like trying to forget stuff, but that usually doesn't work. when I found myself trying to remind Rabbi Moskowitz of an old shot, like I would have to explain it from the ground up, like if you're talking to a chavrusa who actually has a good memory, you can kind of just like jog their memory and then they'll remember everything. But if you have to justify it from the ground up, then you have to work through every step. So I think that's the best thing you can do, meaning that if you catch yourself recalling an old idea, say, okay, let me work it up from the ground up and pretend I'm talking to someone who has not heard it before and who's skeptical, I think that's the best you can do,
So could I also ask, okay, but also when you're in midst of a shiur and like you're hearing an idea that sounds familiar, you can't go through the whole working through ground up.
Yeah.
And that, like, there's gotta be like, as you're sitting there to.
Yeah, there is, all I can say is that there is a slight process of like asking the idea to step aside. And I know that sounds like a little like, I know that sounds a little weird, but like there is a maneuver you can do of like, I don't know how to describe it, put it aside and try to think fresh. And that's all I can recommend. It's very hard. Yeah, at first, but it gets easier. All right, let's stop for today so we don't go into the other shiur.
More faster.
Oh, yeah, exactly. Yeah.